July has been an industrious month in our YouTube garden. As well as working hard to keep the place looking beautiful, I'm also starting in on 2 new projects that I think will really make a difference. There was a time when this seating area here underneath this old apple tree had real charm. I mean, imagine, can't you, pink blossom, then apples when it was a little younger than it is now. Up the side, a lovely rose bush coming into bloom. But it's all gone horribly wrong, never more so than with this furniture. It's a good place to sit, but not at the moment and not on that. There are positive angles to this, the best one being that the view is glorious, a pergola covered in roses, except you can't see a lot of it at the moment from these old branches hanging down. It's sheltered, and you'll feel when you're nestling up against this old tree that you're a little part of history. So there's a potential place of great well-being here. It's just that it's tired and worn out and weary, and when you're tired and worn out and weary, I want you to be able to sit down here and think, oh, isn't this lovely? Time to see what I can do. The first thing I want to tackle is this rose. Now, it looks quite charming and oldie-worldy. If you look closely at it, you'll see it's a briar. This rose has gone back, as we say. All roses are grafted onto a rootstock of dog rose, and dog rose has 7 leaflets like this and a tiny pink flower. The variety's completely disappeared, so this is just an old briar. But it's got charm, hasn't it? So what I want to do is just trim it back a bit so it's not going to, use a Yorkshire expression, clork anybody with these great spikes it's got on it. I'm going to thin it out a bit, which hopefully will keep its charm and also reveal something of this rather delightful old garden roller underneath, which at present is totally hidden from view. This is what's known as judicious pruning. I'm not going to sort of just cut it like a skirt all the way around. I'll leave some bits. A bit more of this off under here. This isn't going to do the rose itself any harm. It'll grow back quite vigorously, but hopefully more under control. Now this is already finished flowering. Dog roses flower quite early in the summer, sort of April, May, and you can see the flowers have been and gone. It doesn't flower again, so there's nothing going to happen here now again until next year. But it's still quite attractive. There's a bit of green froth around the tree. A little bit more there. And these tiny shoots on the apple can all come off. It also reveals this glorious gnarled trunk. There's a great cavity here which looks like something out of Grimm's fairy tales. If I get rid of some of this cobwebby stuff, I don't mind the fact there's sort of ivy growing up there, and this will be a real haven for insect life. Now, hopefully you'll agree that we've kept the charm of what was there. There's a sort of venerability to old trees. I mean, this one here must be more than 100, and it's an apple tree that is still fruiting ferociously. It's not particularly pretty at the moment. I think we can just thin out that a little bit. We can make it look a little bit more elegant, I think. Time to find the loppers. want to try and do it so almost you can't really see where I've been. So it still looks like a lovely old apple tree with bits dangling down, but nothing that's going to get in the way of your head. But it's that much more attractive, lets in a bit more light, and also lets you see out to see the view a bit more. A fringe really, rather than a dense curtain. Oh, sorry. So there we are, I've lifted its skirts a little bit. You can see through it, but it's still tantalising with the view. And I can see what space I've got to work with now. I can do a sketch now and work out what I can do to give you an even greater feeling of being enveloped and hugged by plants and flowers and looking out across the garden. With something like a seating area, it's a good idea just to make a sketch plan of what you hope it will look like. And there you can see it's actually basically a hexagon of paving through which the tree erupts. So hexagon has 6 sides coming down like that. That's the front. And I reckon if I put a flower bed behind the paving, and then also down these sides to there, I can then have some foliage. The tree is back there, occupying that sort of lump, with branches that stretch way out here. It comes a long way out over this seating area. And then what I think we'll do is we'll have, on these back borders here, we'll have shrubs, because they will then wrap around where you're sitting, and in front a lighter arrangement of border perennials which you'll be able to see over, because you'll be looking out there and there and there, and we'll get a bit of colour in there with some pink flowers. And now that we've exposed the garden roller, it becomes what it is, which is a piece of garden sculpture. So what I'm really hoping for when this is finished is that it becomes not just something that you walk past and think, well, that's an old tree, but a destination for morning coffee, afternoon tea, evening drinks. Shall we go and sit underneath the old apple tree with anyone else but me? No, not that line, but that's where I want to be. One thing we do need is new furniture. So I've gone for this Adirondack design of chair, wonderfully angular, American design, age old. You see it on so many American verandas, but it really is incredibly comfortable. I just need to finish putting it together. There we are, one Adirondack chair. Now, I told you they were comfortable, didn't I? Oh, they are. A bit boring in the plain wood, even though it's been treated. A bit more interesting colour, then I'll be happy. The colour I'm using is Heritage Blue, and I think it'll work incredibly well with the pink flowers of the rose up and round, and with the planting scheme. As soon as you get that first bit of colour on, you think there's a kind of feeling of newness and renewal and freshness, and it is astonishing, you know, what paint can achieve in a garden. Not quite as much as plants and flowers, but it has its part to play. There we are then. That's phase 1. On now to phase 2. Anyone who's stagged around the garden with a watering can knows how much easier life is with a hosepipe. But the important thing is getting fitments to that hosepipe which allow you some kind of control over the water that's coming out. Now you might think that by using a hosepipe you're being more extravagant with your watering, but you're not, because with a controlling head on the end of it like this, you can make sure the water goes where it's needed, when it's needed. This is a gun, and this is the attachment which has a stop mechanism inside it. So you can pull it off and the water is pressurised in there, but it's not coming out. By turning this head, you can adjust the kind of spray. There's also a little switch there, which means you can leave it on without touching it. I'm just going to turn it off now so I can show you the different sprays. That, for me, is the most useful. That's an overhead spray. There are various ones on here, but for me, this is the most useful. It's gentle. You can also affect the speed at which the water comes out by using this sliding mechanism, which alters the water pressure. Time of day, always best to water your plants either early in the morning or early in the evening. If they're absolutely gasping for water midday, for goodness sake, give them a drink. But ideally, early morning and early evening means that the water will go into action and the evaporation levels are lower, so more of it will be useful. And don't, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, don't think you're watering your border by doing this. You're not. The plant's roots are what takes up water. You need to get down there. If you can't bend, it's all right to do it at this height, but really get that hose going on to the soil so it's going down to where it's needed, but give them plenty. And if you're not sure whether or not they need water, use a trowel or your hands if you're a flatmate, scrape away a bit of earth, and if it's moist about an inch down, if it feels like a freshly wrung out flannel, they'll be okay. If a period of drought and really hot sun's coming, yes, do make sure there's plenty of water down there for them to be able to use during that hot period. And the most important plants to water well and regularly in hot spells are those that you've just planted, because their roots will not be established and will not be seeking out water. If you only spray the top of the soil like that, and you do it regularly, plants will realise that's where the water is and they'll start sending their roots to the surface. And that means when you go away, they're high and dry, quite literally. So a good soaking, morning or evening, when they need it. And of course, fruit and veg also need to be regularly supplied with water so that development of fruit and veg is even. One way in which we're minimalising water loss in this garden is by mulching. It's a lovely word, isn't it? Mulch. It sounds as though it's doing good, and indeed it is, especially in this case. What a mulch is a thick rug on the surface of moist soil, and that way it prevents evaporation from taking place quite so rapidly. The most popular things to use as a mulch are chipped bark, like this one. This is really coarse, very slow to rot down, and that will last a good number of seasons before it gradually disappears into the soil through rotting and being pulled down by earthworms. You can also get the finer composted bark, which is better at enriching the soil underneath, but doesn't last quite so long as the chipped bark does, which is actually quite ornamental. I've used this time and time again in all the gardens I work in because it really does save time and money, and it keeps plants happy. You know, it's almost like tucking them in at night with a lovely warm blanket or a duvet. You put this around them after planting while the soil is moist. That's important, so then it seals that moisture in, stops it evaporating, and the plants grow far better as a result of having a steady supply of moisture. It'll be effective for quite a long time, an organic mulch like this, but in prolonged dry spells, it's still worth giving your plants some water. Scrape away the mulch, see what the earth is like underneath, push the mulch back and you can still water on top of it. The water will percolate down through the mulch and keep that moisture level high. When it comes to thickness, well, about that. About 2 inches will do nicely, and just make sure it doesn't go right into the crown of the plant. You can make a little hollow around it so the plant comes up in the middle, but that goes almost right up to it. That way you avoid rotting the crown with any kind of decomposition that's going on. If you have been hit with a hosepipe ban, there are ways you can still get water to your plants. One thing this garden does have plenty of is water butts. Every home should have water butts. What's in here is free, and also you've probably noticed whenever you water plants with rainwater they do seem to grow better. So on every downpipe of your house, in this case there's an old tile roof and the lead flashing has been adjusted round the back to divert the water that comes onto that roof into the water butt. And if you're worried that once the water butt's full, what's going to happen to the water? It's all going to overflow. No. You can get downpipes with diverters in them, which carry on filling this until it's full, and then the water goes down the drain. So if you can store every drop of water possible in your garden, you'll be far less irritated when there's a hosepipe ban. Don't get me started. There are lots of ways in which you can use that water wisely. Put a few of them over here. One thing I want to put into this garden is automated irrigation. And believe it or not, this rather primitive looking water butt is a very good place to start. So if on your allotment or down at the end of the garden where there's no water main accessible, you want to do automated irrigation, what can you do? Well, if you've got a water butt, you can use this. You've got a pump on the bottom, and up this pipe is the outlet. And that sits in there in your water butt with the outlet coming over the edge, and here is another piece of kit which sits on the side of the water butt. On here you have a timer, an adjuster for the water pressure, and in here goes the battery, just like a battery that you get on an electrical lawnmower or piece of garden equipment. Click that in place, fasten that on there, and then this is the outlet. The pump sends the water up the pipe when it's turned on and timed. You fasten that to the hose pipe, which leads to your irrigation system. So the hose pipe goes from there right the way across the front of the greenhouse, and here I've already started setting up this drip irrigation system. All these connectors and bits and bobs, you work out how you want them to run across, in this case, the raised bed. They've got these things which keep them firm in the ground. They connect to the end of the hose pipe when the whole thing is connected up, and you've worked out then a system which can water multiple beds. I've got 3 trickle lines running along this bed because I thought that made more sense than just doing a couple, and I want to fit it all together and make sure the pegs are holding it down. Wish me luck, bit of a fiddle. So they're all in. I think I've got all my connections fairly solid, so fingers crossed. Back to the centre of operations, the water butt. I'll leave the pressure fairly low at the moment just till I see what it's doing, and then turn it on to manual, which is the first setting on the timer. So, because I want it to come on instantly. See if it does. Is it going to? Houston, we appear to have liftoff. Let's just see if it's coming out the other end. It is. Look, my trickle irrigation is trickling. all the way along. And it's interesting when you see the diagrams of these, because it goes down the soil like that, widening as it goes. So there we are. My vegetables are being watered by rainwater, free. The drip hose is one of the most efficient and effective ways of watering, less wasteful than sprays. And now it's beginning to rain. I didn't realise I'd turned that tap on as well. There we are, job done. What me water butt won't do, the skies will help. In our garden, the entrance from the patio to the rest of the garden is framed by two black urns. They may not look like much at the moment, but with a little paint and the right choice of plants, they'll become the perfect introduction to any garden. So here it is, one of a pair, as the auctioneer might say. Not quite as heavy. Probably Victorian metal, not cast iron I don't think, because it's not that heavy, and painted black, which might have suited Isambard Kingdom Brunel for the edge of a bridge, but for me it's just a bit hefty and sort of oppressive. But I've found a colour which I think will be suitable for this garden because it picks up other tones that are in use. Now you've got a choice with urns and containers like this. You can either leave them empty, just as pieces of statuesque garden statuary, or you can plant them up. And I want to plant this up with something which complements its own colour when it's painted and the rest of the garden. Before I put the new coat of paint on, I want to check that any old flaking paint is removed. So I'm using a wire brush to give it a really good scrub. If I didn't do this and some of this black paint was loose, it'd just fall off when the new paint had gone on it and it'd look a right old mess. The colour here is the same as I used on the planters, called warm clay. And this particular paint at that shade is suitable for timber, but it's also suitable for metal. And that's the important thing. Check you've got a paint which is going to be suitable for the material to which it's being applied. And as you can see, it's not covering completely. This is going to take about 3 coats to give a really dense finish of the colour that I want. 3 coats of paint later, and it's ready to be repositioned next door to its neighbour. Bit of jiggling, get the barrow out from underneath, and then wiggle it to get it back where it was. And there we have, I think, a very nice entrance to the garden. And somehow that colour is so much more complementary with all the plants around it rather than that harsh, hard black. And it's interesting how a lighter colour can lift an entire planting scheme. You start to look at it differently, you notice different things because they're resonating with that colour. Now I have to decide what to put in them to complement or to contrast. Well, I reckon this newish hydrangea called Pole Star will work pretty well as a central plant, and because it's slightly tinged with pink and the stems here are a dusky pink, if I choose something to go around it that picks up that colour, it will almost look as though I planned it. I've got here a little angel pelargonium called Nova, and that interspersed with variegated ivy, which will pick up the yellow, Stick with me, and I think when I've finished it'll probably look quite nice. Containers always look a little bit raw when you first plant them, but I have high hopes that this will soon fluff up a bit, and certainly the plants inside will grow and fill out with this tub and basket compost I'm filling in around them. The important thing is to make sure they never go short of water. A little bit more compost. Always make sure you leave a big enough gap between the rim of the pot and the surface of the compost so that you can come with a hose pipe or a water can or whatever and give it a really good drink, fill it up a bit, then it'll soak down. If the compost is too near the surface, it just runs off and there's greater danger of them drying out. A little bit more, and then nearly there, one more. I don't know about you, but I think that's worked really well. I've left a good gap for watering, give them a good soak, and you'll just hear them saying, "Oh, thanks, Al." In weather like this, they need a good soak every day, but the great thing about them at this height is you can stick your fingers in the compost and feel if it's dry or sufficiently damp. I love this moment. I love watering because it's always struck me that you're giving life to plants. The first job I did in the parks department when I was 15 was watering a greenhouse, which thrilled me to bits apart from being scary. Suddenly I was in charge of all these plants. But the thrill, pathetic though it may sound, of watering and the relaxation and the therapy stays with me. So where once we had two black urns sort of glowering in the shadows, with their new coat of lighter paint and a fresh planting scheme, suddenly they're an imposing entrance to the garden. They make you and it feel special. They lead your eye on to the view, framing it beautifully. You don't really want to go for a while because it's actually quite nice just being here, surrounded by this glorious framework of invitation. Thank you very much. Lovely to be with you. It's time for the next stage in the creation of our central seating area. Those are the Adirondack chairs that'll go on it. So it's a fairly straightforward thing to do. I'll leave the front bit open, obviously, so you can get in and out to your chair, but then making a border that follows the shape of this bit of paving here, but goes right the way around the tree. And the easiest way to cut it out is with this evil-looking instrument, the half-moon iron. If you're doing a long bed or border, obviously you can stretch a taut garden line out and cut to that. But here, I'm sort of following by eye, being experienced and very old. I think I know the line I'm doing. But if you push your half moon in and you wiggle it about, you can see the shape you're making, and if it's wrong, you can then take it up and kick it back so that you're covering up that line and making a new one. I love doing this. There's something wonderfully creative about making a new bed, bringing life where life did not exist before, except for a bit of grass that's suffering from the drought. I want to be fairly generous with this, but I have a liking, as well as for deep, generous borders, for narrow ones, what I call ribbon borders, because they wrap around things. You can do them either side of a path. Borders only about 2 feet wide that run alongside a straight path or a winding one, and they look really very pretty, very attractive, and very inviting. The least important part of it, where you can do a bit of fudging if you need to, is round the back, because everybody's facing that way. Now hopefully my lines will meet when I get there. I'm just trying to mirror these two sides here so they go along and in and then back by about the same sort of length. The weather has been really hot and dry, so what I've done here, just to show how we can make a border, is I've really soaked the earth before I've started digging it out. That way I can cut a decent line in it rather than it turning to dust. I've just got this last bit now to link up the straight bit at the back with this side here. So it's now a case of lining those two up by that age-old thing called eye. Wiser people would get a line out. Idiots like me like taking a bit of a risk. Consider I've done that by eye. That's not half bad. Years of experience at the grindstone of horticulture. And now I've got the shape correctly cut out, I can get the spade, skim off the turf as narrow and as thin as possible, because I want to keep the earth underneath it, and then the turf I'm skimming off will go on the compost heap. This is where you really begin to see it now, as I skim off the grass. I want to avoid taking too much soil off, because that's what I want to use. Doesn't matter if this all falls apart, it shows I'm doing it thinly. So I marked it out with a half moon, stripped off the turf with a spade, and then we're working on this. Matt's helping, because this is really tough stuff around a tree. Soil's very hard, it's also very dry, so I'm working in loads of well-rotted farmyard manure here. You can use any kind of organic matter at all, home compost heap if you want, but Be generous, work in as much as you can. This isn't only providing nutrition, it's providing moisture holding capacity. And in dry summers, the more moisture that you can get to stay around the roots, the better will your plants establish and last through the hot weather. So we're working our way all the way around this, and there's no rush. Nobody's got a time clock on you. Nobody is judging you if you get help. I hope. What I hope you can see here now as well is the shape of the bed. This sort of hexagonal patio bit in the middle, and the edge of the bed is mirroring that but expanded. So we've kept the sort of shape of the central garden feature, and I want to feast my eyes on it for a moment or two without anything in it, just to convince myself that it wasn't actually a bad idea doing that with it, was it? I'm trying to do a sort of framework of lowish shrubs round the back, of which more in a minute, and then some lower ones round the front, and intersperse them with summer flowering perennials. So I'm choosing plants which can cope at the back where it is shadier with a bit of shade, quite a few evergreen shrubs there, and then coming around to summer flowers at the front where the light is better, and where when you're sitting in those two chairs, when they pop back, you can enjoy the flowers around you. So always place before you plant, and then you'll feel more confident that you've got it right. If you plant each bit as you do it, you sometimes think, I want that there. There's no chance that might happen, but there we are, a ping moment, I call them. You put something in, you think, oh, yeah, that's all right. And that little erigeron in there, which seeds itself around, will eventually find its way through. I've planted up quite thickly, I admit. I've been a bit generous with it, but I want it to look like it's going to look, so you can see what the overall effect will be. Time to get down on my knees now, get them in. This little shrub here, you might even call it a shrublet, is one of the unsung heroes of the garden. It's a little euonymus. It's called Euonymus Emerald Gaiety. There's another one called Emerald and Gold, which has a yellow edge to the leaf. This one has a creamy white edge. It grows perhaps about waist height. It's evergreen, really useful, happy in almost any soil, sun or shade. And if it hits a wall, these stems start scaling upwards. So it's just a really good doer. I hesitate to call it a filler, but it is, I suppose, really. And in a situation like this, it'll make this deep rug underneath the tree, and it won't mind the rather shady conditions back here. I'm putting choisia in here behind it, and an escalonia there to the right. A really good plant for seaside gardens, escalonia. Again, evergreen leaves, but that lovely pink blossom in spring and summer. So I'm ending up with this great rug back here, which is evergreen. All these plants will keep their leaves in winter, so there's always something to look at. These Japanese anemones have long been a stalwart of the late summer border, coming into flower in August and going on right through September and October into autumn. But now we have the Swan series. This is Elfin Swan. They start earlier, as early as June, and carry on flowering right the way through to autumn. So they're giving us better value for money. Now, Japanese anemones are incredibly tough. They sometimes take a year or two to settle in and be happy. If you plant them and they sulk for a year or two, be patient with them, because when they do get going, they're really useful. Throw them in with your fingers, no air pockets. Beginning to come together, isn't it? when you're looking for plants to go under trees, don't forget the Japanese anemone. They're really good in shade like this, and they last for such a long time, right on into the autumn. And with the swan varieties, they start earlier too. What's not to like, eh? This little beauty here is a relative of lamb's ears, you know, the creeping one with the white furry leaves. It's a stachys, and this is Stachys summer grapes, which is a lovely thing with these spires of flower, classic dead nettle flowers, and they are absolutely adored by bees. Now you may say, what do you want to put a plant that attracts bees for where a sitting area is? Well, because bees are everywhere, and we need to get used to not doing a windmill impersonation, and you'll hear them buzzing beautifully. I'm lowering this into the hole, and I'm planting most of these things here in 2s and 3s. This whole myth about you must plant in odd numbers, never even numbers, absolutely rubbish. It doesn't matter what number you plant in, just plant for the effect that you want. And I think you'll agree this is beginning to come together now. I'm working on the height building from the front to the back. These at the front here, the geraniums and the Nepeta, are quite low. This is about the height it is, this Stachys. And then the Japanese anemones will get much taller, and at the back the shrubs will be taller still. So you will get this kind of wrap-around effect of an increasing sized wall of greenery and flowers into which you can snuggle. Can't wait to put these chairs back and try it out. Provided you're allowed to use your hosepipe, give them a really good drink. Probably more than you think. You're establishing them here for the good of the planet, for wildlife and yourself. It's not irresponsible. It's a very responsible thing to do, to plant a garden, but we do have to obey regulations, don't we? But use whatever resources of water you have to feed your plants, which in turn feed us and the wildlife with which we share our earth. This is a vital thing to do, not a frippery, something which is for the greater good. So there we are, what was once a bit of old paving around a big old gnarled apple tree with an old roller stuck alongside it has become an inviting sanctuary, a little sitting area where you can admire your garden, have a glass or a mug, surrounded by flowers which tone in with the paintwork of the heritage blue. Well, I'd like to sit there. Really pleased with that. Nice, isn't it? If you've enjoyed this video, why not subscribe? I post new gardening videos every week to help make your garden beautiful, productive, and a pleasure to be in.